Welcome to Difference Talks, the show that focuses on one word, differentiation, and how it is more important today than ever to discover what makes your brand unique and celebrate it with the most important people, your team.
In each episode, we meet people who've had the courage to stand up and stand out, sometimes against great odds. In a world of copies, conformity, and commodities, uniqueness speaks volumes. Difference Talks.
Hello, everybody. I am Barry LeBove. I am founder of LeBove Marketing, Training, and Communications and author of The Power of Differentiation. Joining me today as co-host is Marcus McMillan, who is Vice President, Creative Director, and co-owner as well with me. We have a great guest, a good friend of ours, Jacob Brown. I'll tell you a little bit about him, and then Jacob, I want you to kind of share your story, okay?
Awesome.
He is a transformational speaker. He's also a coach, and a coach in a number of ways. He can coach entrepreneurs. He can coach business leaders, as an example. He's also a thought leader, and he is a purely inspiring, positive person who I don't think you can stay unexcited for very long when you're listening to him. So Marcus and I want to introduce you. We're going to ask you a few questions today, but I'd like to turn it to you for you to share just a little bit of your story and what you're doing these days and what really is behind Fail Forward.
As Barry mentioned, I am a transformational speaker. I'm a soon-to-be author, but I'm also a coach. And I kind of came this way because I left the NFL back in 2006. I say I left the NFL, but I was actually cut by the Oakland Raiders. I came home and I joined the normal folk and got a job. And I worked my way up the ladder, by which I met Barry late in my career as a creative director. I was a creative director for a large agency here in Michigan. And Barry and I connected then, and we've been good friends ever since then. I got to a point in my career where I decided I was no longer happy with what I was doing in analytics and product launches and design, all these things. I more so wanted to impact lives. And I had started this brand, this message, and it's not original. It's called Fail Forward. And I hashtag Fail Forward after every single one of my posts, every single one of my videos. And I know that John Maxwell wrote a book back in 2000 called Failing Forward. My book is going to be called Fail Forward Mentality, and it's going to be a culmination of kind of my life story to how I got where I was. I've failed quite a bit in my life, from a failed marriage to failing out of college to failing out of the NFL, failed businesses, failed friendships. I lived homeless for about 3 months. I've gone through a lot, but one thing that I've always done is that I failed forward. So one thing that I try to teach people is that, listen, the setbacks in your life don't have to be the end. In fact, they can be the springboard into the next phase of your life. And I try to be the example. A lot of people call me their guinea pig because they watch me fail before I succeed. And that gives them the hope that they can do it too. So I'm excited to join you guys. And hopefully something I say today might impact and improve your life.
Jacob, question here. You talked about failing.
Yep.
Let's get to the heart of it. How bad did it get? I mean, how bad was it? Because so often, I mean, I'm guilty of this. So often you see somebody and they're doing great. Things are going great. And they go, boy, it was just terrible. A couple of years ago, it was bad. And it's really great now. And it's kind of like we sugarcoat it. And it's like it's a made for TV movie where everything just turns out great.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way for you. So can you get a little in depth and just tell us what happened?
Yeah. Listen, I've had a lot of setbacks in my life. Some of them are self-imposed, right? I struggled with alcohol for about 15 years. Back in 2001 was my last drink on August 24th, 2021. By the grace of God, I'll be 3 years sober in next month. So I'm about a month away from my 3-year sobriety anniversary. But before that, Barry, I mean, I ruined businesses, I ruined jobs, I ruined relationships with my conduct. I ruined a lot of things And looking back, I blamed a lot of other people for where I was, right? I blamed a lot of people for why I was doing what I was doing. I was making excuses for all of the things that I did. And at the end of the day, one thing I learned in my sobriety journey is to take full accountability. A lot of people do not want to take full accountability. They don't want to accept the fact that they are in their lives where they are because of the decisions that they've made. And once I came to that realization and I took full accountability for where I was in my life changed. But before that, a failed marriage. I was married for 7 years. We had 2 boys. They were 5 and 3 when we got divorced in 2012. I made some bad decisions after that, and I lived homeless for about 3 months. I lost a job. I lost businesses. I lost friends. And at the end of the day, I was rock bottom. I lived in a hotel for a couple months. I lived in a 4-foot crawl space with one of my friends for about 3.5 weeks. I had 2 trash bags. I had a picture of my boys, and that's about all I owned at a period of time. And that was 12 years ago, right? And I had to restart my life. And I'm not shy about what I talk about online. Some of these stories that I'm sharing, I share them online. I share them on LinkedIn, the place that people say is just for business. Well, here's the thing. Business is full of people, and there are no businesses without humans. And the more that I can share and show the human side of who I am and what I've done and how I've overcome, the more I can help other people, which is why I try to be as vulnerable and transparent as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Jacob, the other word in there, the fail forward. Tell us about forward. What does that
Yeah.
mean? So you're failing, but you're falling forward. So you're continuing to walk in this really great, path and position. What does that mean?
Yeah, fail forward for me comes from my aunt. So I was down in Atlanta, Georgia in 2006. It was 2 months before the draft. And she asked me a question. She says, Jake, what happens if football doesn't work out? And I looked at her, I'm like, why would you even ask me that question? Right? I'm a 22-year-old, very athletic, getting ready to go to the NFL. I've got options. And she says, what happens if it doesn't work out? And I said, I'll just fall back on what I was getting my degree in at the time, graphic and web design. And she said something that changed my life. She says, Jake, if you're ever going to fall or fail, always fall or fail forward. And when she said that, it slapped me in the face, because in football, if you know anything about football, when you're running the ball and you get tackled, you're taught to fall forward. And the reason is because you gain extra yards, even though you failed the mission. But if you get tackled on the 1-yard line and you fall forward, what happens? Touchdown.
Yep.
Right? You score. The same is true in your life. Everything that you do in your life, you could fail. You might fail. And in fact, if you're trying to do anything remarkable in life, you're probably going to fail at some point along the way. But that doesn't mean that you lose all of the progress, all the knowledge, all the experience that you gained before the failure. When someone's running the ball and they get tackled, they don't go back and start the next play at the line of scrimmage from the last play. They started from the next play. So the same thing happens in our lives when we fail. Every business that I failed, every relationship that I failed, every friendship, every job, I took the experience, the knowledge into the next phase, the next project, the next job, the next relationship, and I used that knowledge to grow wisdom. And that's how I failed forward. So I was always further ahead than if I had just began.
As you're looking at corporate America every day, because you're dealing with people in corporate America,
Yeah.
and you're dealing in 2 different ways. You're dealing with human being who you work with or work for there. But then you look at all the people you're speaking to. What do you see? What's out there?
See,
What is it?
what I see are a bunch of human beings that all think, hurt, heal, worry just the same. One of the things that I do as soon as I step on the stage is I tell a short story, and you guys have probably heard it, the story of Simon Sinek, where he talks about the former Undersecretary of Defense that was drinking from a styrofoam cup of coffee. And I won't go into the story, but at the end of the story, that former Undersecretary of Defense basically said, listen, all the treatment that I had gotten when I was the Undersecretary of Defense, I recognized wasn't for me, but for the position that I held. I recognize that I deserve a styrofoam cup. I don't need all of these gifts. I don't need all of the praise, because at the end of the day, I'm just a human being, right? And one thing that I try to teach people is, listen, it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter how high you've climbed up the ladder. At the end of the day, you're just a human being, and that is good enough. Because a lot of people, once they lose their titles, they lose their positions, they lose their identity. And I know that because I did. When I lost football, I didn't know who I was anymore. When I lost jobs, I didn't know who I was anymore. There was a period of time where I went from a manager level to a director level and back down to a manager level, but that manager level was $30,000 higher in salary. But I was worried that other people might think that I had taken a step back, because that's how we are in our minds. We're so worried about what other people think about our trajectory in this life. And I think the more that we just eliminate those titles, eliminate that hierarchy, eliminate that mindset, we can all come to grips to understand we all want the same things. We want peace, we want success, we want happiness, and we hopefully want that for other people as well. That's what I see when I look into the audience.
You know, a person I did a podcast for, Latasha Nelson, is a really wonderful person, and she uses this term, and she said it's not her original term, but she works with people as a coach, and she says she likes to work with title-free leaders.
Yeah.
Like, and I thought, title-free leader. Think about title-free leadership, because if you're a leader, do you need that title? So the Secretary of Defense with the styrofoam cup, his whole point was all the flashy stuff's for the title. Right? I'm just a guy and I'm doing my thing. And so I think the idea of what you're talking about is really fascinating, because title free, you know, do I need a title to prove that I'm a leader? And hopefully I don't. Hopefully I act in that way. And whether I'm, you know, on the factory floor, whether I'm cleaning out garbage, whether I'm running a multi-billion-dollar company, I exhibit leadership.
Absolutely.
I don't need the trappings, hopefully.
Yeah. So, Jacob, what is that one thing that, you know, you think, and again, you do share a lot, and it's really great content. Is there something that folks don't know about you that would be, you know, very surprising and interesting?
I think at the end of the day, the core of where I'm trying to show and share is, listen, I have vulnerabilities, I have fears, I have worries as well, right? One of my biggest worries, and this probably is because I'm the middle child of 7, is that I'm always being left out, that I am never good enough, and that I am not as good as other people might believe that I am. That's a huge fear of mine. And sometimes it's a belief, right? I have that imposter syndrome, that voice that comes in the back of my head at some points and say, Jake, you don't have the education, you don't have the experience, you don't have the certifications. Who do you think you are? And I think all of us at some point have those moments where you have those voices come to your head, and you know, what do you do with those at some points? And I know that I used to suppress them in different ways before, but one of the things that I do now is I try to be as vulnerable and transparent as possible, and let people know at the end of the day, listen, I'm no influencer, I am no celebrity, I am just a normal human being trying to do what's right and best in this world that I possibly can in this phase of my life. So at the end of the day, there are periods of time where I just don't feel good enough. I don't feel smart enough. I don't feel educated enough. I don't feel like I belong at the table. And I think a lot of people might not know that I have those types of thoughts as well.
Yeah, that's neat. If I may, Barry, I think what's cool about that, Jacob, is that I've certainly experienced that, and that insecurity. And what's interesting is it drives me to improve all the time. It's like there's a challenge right there on my shoulder. It's the annoying voice, like you said, and it's like, okay, I've got to kick it in gear. It challenges me, and it's not easy. Life is not. And I think when you said that, it really inspired me, because it's like, yeah, you're right. And it actually, I think, makes me potentially a better leader and a better employee, because I'm like, okay, I'm always like pushing myself to improve, and I'm kind of my worst critic. And I don't know if that speaks to you too.
That totally speaks to me, and it's one thing that I do as well. I work extra harder, extra earlier, extra longer because I really want to eliminate those doubts and those fears
Hmm.
that I have in my own self, not in other people, but in my own self, right? I
Yep.
want to know that I'm putting in the work, I'm putting in the time, I'm reading, I'm watching, I'm learning as much as possible so that I can eliminate some of those thoughts and some of those doubts. And again, it keeps me humble no matter how big the stages are, no
Yep.
matter how big the check comes. It keeps me humble because I know what it feels like to lose everything and have everything in the same day.
Hmm.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's amazing because one thing I find very interesting in what you're saying is, and we hear this from some of the most successful people, and that is we all fall short. We
Yeah.
all have fears and we all fail.
Yep.
And it's what we do with it. You know, if we're a musician and we make a huge mistake as we're performing, we either give up and bolt, or
Yep.
we say, you know what, we're moving through and we're
Mhm.
going to finish this thing, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what we're all here for. We're going to take a short break. We're with Jacob Brown, who is absolutely inspiring and amazing, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Difference Talks podcast. Difference Talks is brought to you by LeBove Marketing Communications and Training. LeBove focuses on one word: differentiation.
In fact, we wrote the book on it called The Power of Differentiation. Our goal is to inspire 1 million people with this message, helping brands win hearts, minds, and market share.
Discover more at lebove.com.
We are back with Jacob Brown. Jacob just shared one of his inner secret issues, which is feeling like, gee, he sometimes isn't good enough. And that's hard to believe when you're 6'3", 250 pounds, and, you know, pretty much an imposing physical human being. But we all suffer from that. So, question for you now. This is our differentiation section of our podcast. Jacob, can you share a time where you had to tackle a challenge and rally people around it, giving people who were involved with you a feeling of meaning and significance?
Yeah, I remember a specific time where I was working at an agency, and one of my superiors promised the client something that was dang near impossible from a timeline standpoint, from a budget standpoint, and my team was not the biggest, but they were a fantastic team. Well, I remember leaving that meeting, and I called my team members and I said, "Hey guys, I'm going to be stepping in and helping you with this project. I know it's very unrealistic, but we've got to do our best." And we not only knocked the project out of the blocks, we helped launch a large $18 billion company here into the United States from India, and it was the only the second 3D model configurator to come to market behind Polaris back in 2018, and it was for Mahindra Roxor, and it was something we were very proud of. And when I brought the team to the table and I said, "Listen, I'm here with you. It's not something I'm just going to throw at you and not expect to help," and got my hands dirty with them and brought them all together. That celebration, once that project was launched, was not something that I held pride around. It was something that I put all of the attention onto my team,
Hmm.
and that's something they will never forget. They will absolutely never forget. And we celebrated together. And even today, whenever I run into one of them, we still talk about that project because they understood what a true leader does in that moment. And that was one of the times where I truly did feel like a true leader, because I believe that the best leaders are servants as well, and they make sure that their teams have what they need and are willing to step in and get their hands dirty as well.
So I'd like you to talk a little on this if you could, but what we run into as we work with companies and we're trying to identify what makes them unique. And then we say, okay, well, this is how it can be shared. But before we go and share it with the world, we got to share it with the most important people. And sometimes our client goes, well, who are they? And we go, the people who are building it, the people who designed it, the people who are
Yeah.
servicing it, the people who are selling it. Sometimes we call them the employees or the coworkers or the distributors. And it's so important to do it. Now, way
Yeah.
back way back when you and I talked 10 or more years ago, if we said that to a client, quite often the client would say, look, guys, I'm paying them $5-10 an hour to work. They need to keep their head down and just go. I don't have time for this fluffy garbage. But I have to say, today's CEOs and executives, when we talk about this, they embrace it. Some of them will tear up. Some of them say, look, this is like the most important part of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Because people have to feel significance. You know, Seth Godin has a book called The Song of Significance. And we just interviewed Seth on our show. And if people don't have meaning, why do we expect them to do a good job? Why do we expect them to stay?
Exactly.
So what is your message in that, Jacob? Because you're dealing with audiences, and it's not filled with only executives. It's filled with a lot of people, a lot of levels. What is your standpoint on that? How do you look at it, and how do you help that situation improve?
So I tell a story, and the story is around Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister is he was a medical student at Oxford University in the UK, and he was the first human being back in 1954, May 6th, to break the 4-minute mile barrier. And most people believe that Roger Bannister was out there by himself, and he ran this 4-minute mile and changed the world. But Roger Bannister, if you watch any of his interviews, he talks about his two friends, Chris Brasher and Chris Chataway. Those two were Olympians, one a gold medalist in the Olympic steeplechase. And they both put their pride aside to help their good friend Roger Bannister break this 4-minute mile barrier after failing at the attempt a year prior. But Roger Bannister allowed them to be his pace runners for when he broke the 4-minute mile barrier. And they put their pride aside. They helped their good friend break the 4-minute mile barrier, change the course of history, because thousands of people after that day have broken that 4-minute mile barrier. It's actually the standard when it comes to any type of mile competitive race. And Roger Bannister did that. But if you listen to Roger Bannister, all he does is talk about his good friends, Chris and what they did for him that day, because he understood that there's no way that he would have broke that barrier without his good friends. And I try to teach leaders, I try to teach employees, I try to teach team members, listen, if you want to do anything remarkable, you have to find a Chris and a Chris to help you achieve those goals, to get across that finish line, to do something remarkable. And then when you do that, make sure that you give them the praise and the glory, because you would not be there without them.
So we all need our Chris and Chris's.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great story. I never heard that before. I was familiar with Bannister, and he had tried to break that 4-minute mile time and time again, missed it by seconds.
Yeah.
And then tell me, what does this mean? After he broke that record, others then after that, they're breaking the record. So what's that tell you?
Yeah. Someone has to be the first. So Roger Bannister, back in 1953, when he tried to first break the record, this is when doctors, experts, and physicians all said, if you push your body that hard, that far, that fast, your heart could explode. So not only did Roger Bannister break the 4-minute mile barrier, he defeated the fear of death. And once he did that, once other people saw that he did that, I think it was only 40 days later that Landy from Australia broke the 4-minute mile barrier, and the next week someone else did, and within a year hundreds of people have broken the barrier because someone needed to see someone else do something first. And I also teach people, listen, sometimes you have to be the first in order to open the door for people that come behind you.
Sure. Wow. Defeat the fear. I mean, how cool is that? You know, you've got a fear-based mentality, and you've got to beat that. I think the failing forward, it's interesting. We've talked to a number of folks, and we talk about failure, and that failure is okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but there is a fear just in us saying that. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to ever fail. I never.
Right.
It's like, those happen all the time, and we have to almost be accepting, vulnerable, wide open to the fact of failure, or else we don't learn. And career growth is only grows an inch, and we have the capacity to grow a lot more. So yeah, I love that. You defeated the fear, and to your point, Barry, it's like they opened the door to that. So that was great. Well, Jacob, I'd like to ask a question. I know this is a special question, and we've asked many, and it's kind of spurs on some really cool thinking and discussion. So, after a really great day where you've had a great discussion with the team, really inspiring, and at the end of that day, you've come home, you've probably kicked up your feet maybe, and you've got your favorite beverage sitting next to you, but you're relaxing, but you feel inspired, you feel engaged, you've definitely motivated and transformed maybe other teams. We want to know, what does that best day look like for you? What happened? What took place? It could be here at your home, it could be in an office somewhere, you could be traveling. What's taken place to have that really best day?
One of my favorite things to do when I travel and speak is to not just do a keynote, but to do a keynote workshop. And in my keynote workshops, I get up and I do a 30 to 45-minute motivational, inspirational, transformational talk. Then we take a break, and then we do a hour-long workshop. And that workshop could be two different things. It could be leading from the core, or it could be hunting your goals. And one of the things that I love, love, love to do is to see the spark in other people, to see that, listen, I can achieve a goal. I can set a goal. I can achieve it. And I can write myself a 6-month letter that I know is going to happen in my life 6 months from now. And whether it's me reading those 6 months letters after I've done that workshop, or whether it's someone that's writing down that goal and then sharing it with the audience, right? I always encourage people to share your goals with the audience. And when I see that something I've said in the talk, something I've shared in my vulnerability, or something that has been done in the workshop, I can see the transformation happening before my eyes. I can see the light bulb going off. I can see the hope that I'm giving people. And I get back home and I realize that I am not just inspiring people, I am changing lives. That is what I want to do in this world. I want to give people hope where they might feel hopeless. I want to help people turn their messes into messages and their tests into testimonies. And that at the end of the day, and I want to be used to be able to do that and to help other people to do the same, because I want not just myself to feel that happiness and sense of accomplishment. I want other people to feel the same way as well.
Jacob, let's say you have a good friend who's really going through a tough time, and you put your arm around him or her. What do you tell them right now?
Right now, I tell them, I said, listen, all the things that you're going through are going to serve a purpose. You might not know it now, but if you look back at your life, all of the bad things that have happened, you've survived. And you can probably look back and say, I'm glad I went through that. And know that your life, your best life is ahead of you, and you're not alone going through this. I'm going to be here as we go through this together, and I'm going to be there when we celebrate the testimony coming from this test. So that's what I probably tell them right now. And I've had to do that quite a bit.
Let's say it's 3 years down the road and we bump into you and you say, hey, last 3 years have been best years of your life. What's happened?
You're speaking my language right now. I firmly believe that you should speak what you seek until you see what you've said. That comes from Chris Gardner, who the movie The Pursuit of Happiness is about. And if you've seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, you've watched Chris Gardner, who Will Smith played in the movie, manifest the things that he wanted in his life. If I were to say 3 years from now where I would like to be, I would like to have written 2 to 3 books. I would love to be able to impact thousands, if not millions of people in their lives. I would love to have built my first homeless restoration camp and park. I have a firm belief that I want to pull homeless off the street, rehabilitate them, whether it be from drugs, alcohol, or just mental health, and get them back into society, and to be able to tell their story to help more people do the same. So 3 years from now, that's what I would love to be doing, Barry. I'd also love to have a house down in Tampa, Florida as well, that I could vacation to and come back to my house in Michigan.
That's
Awesome.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
well,
great.
I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure. What I've picked up today from you is obviously a lot of energy. I love the humility, though, because the humility intensifies the energy for me
Thank you.
because you're real. You're real, and I can sense that. And I know that you're on a mission, and you're on a mission that's selfless, but you get something from it, but you're trying to help others. So that's what I'm
Absolutely.
picking up today. Marcus?
Yeah, I think, a lot that you've already mentioned, Jacob, is so powerful. And I mean, it moves me too. I mean, just to hear you say that stuff is just, it really is. And it is funny and very interesting, what can impact you. And it's probably the same kind of stuff you were telling yourself
Yeah,
in some of those situations. I certainly have
absolutely.
had that where I have to almost talk to myself and say, stay positive, or, hey, this is something I should be worried about, or, you always need that person to turn to. So the potential of affecting millions of lives, I can hear it now and I can see it. And I think you'll be right on your way if I know you already are. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in 3 years. And if not, we'll talk to you before then. So this has been
Thank you,
awesome.
guys. I
It really
appreciate
has
it.
been. It
Yep.
really has been. Stephen Covey said something like your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, or he was talking in that area, those type of terms. And I think that,
Mm.
you think about if you're really emotional and you're really intense, you're also going to feel really emotionally negative at times and really intensely sad or down. And we
Yeah.
have to realize that it's both sides of the same coin. I
Mhm.
mean, it's who we are. The more we care, the more frustrated we get, right? So you're
Absolutely.
giving a really great message. How can people learn more about you? How can some really smart companies out there say, I need to get this guy in front of my people? What do they need to do to find you?
Yeah, so I should not be too hard to find. If you search me on Google, Jacob Brown speaker, my website comes right up. That comes from my agency experience. I've touted myself as an SEO expert, so I'm also the #1 transformational speaker. If you're looking for a transformational speaker on Google, you'll find me. My website is failforwardbrown.com. Again, that's failforwardbrown.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jacob Brown. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, official Jake Brown. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys.
Hey, we'd love to work with you. And I have a few folks I want to send your way that I think could really utilize your energy and your wisdom. So thank you for being on Difference Talks. From Marcus and from me, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you so much, Marcus. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. And hopefully I said something today that might impact your lives greatly.
Absolutely.
You
You certainly
did.
did.
You did for sure. Remember, leaders differentiate. I thank you. And until next time.
Thank you for listening to Difference Talks, produced by the amazing team at LaBeouf. All original music on this podcast was created by LaBeouf.
Buy our book, The Power of Differentiation, on Amazon. Have a question for the Difference Talks team? Email us at differencetalks@labeouf.com.